And then play the regular
radio.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Between what we see and only thing we know and believe, there are worlds. There are things that we cannot understand. Bigfoot's Pad Paranormal Investigations team is in charge of the field. Bigfoot's Pad Paranormal Investigations team.
Edition of Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Radio. I'm your host, King Sasquatch, and my co-hosts are with me tonight. I'll let them introduce themselves.
My name is Tim, also known as King Gray.
I'm Nick, also known as Mothman Warrior 1.0.
I'm Archangel, also known as Brent.
We have a caller on the line, so I'll get to your call in just a minute. We'll do the news real quick, and then I'll answer your call. We're going to start off with a little bit of news, and then we're going to take our caller that's on the line. Life on another planet. Glice 581G was discovered orbiting a nearby star at a distance that places it squarely in habitable zone where liquid water could exist on the surface. Of around 500 planets that astronomers have found outside our solar system, this is the first one to be considered habitable. The planet is similar to the size of Earth, and its mass indicates that it's probably rocky with a definite surface and has enough gravity to hold an atmosphere, according to Professor Stephen Vogt, who led the team that discovered it. Personally, given the ubiquity and prosperity of life to flourish wherever it can, I would say my own personal feeling is that the chances of life on the planet are 100%, he said during a press briefing. I almost have no doubt about it. The surface gravity would be about the same or slightly higher than Earth, so a person could easily walk upright on the planet, as they said. So what do you guys think about all that?
Well, I've seen the whole thing on CNN and stuff. It's pretty crazy.
I don't know, what do you think, Nick?
Yeah. I think it's pretty interesting. Actually, a friend of mine on Facebook posted that he's a big into sci-fis and aliens. So he posted that a couple of days. Had to get that sound effect.
I always got to play it when the show begins.
Of course. But yeah, we talked about it, and I think that, it's got potential. I did read an article about it myself, or a separate article, and it said that the planet has a very small orbit around its star, and has a very slow spinning on its tilt. So basically, half the time, one half of the planet is completely in darkness and like extreme, like negative 200 below. It's like 200 below, and then on the other side, it's like incredibly hot. And then there's this one little strip in the middle that might have life. This article said it. I just wanted to throw in that little bit more information. But yeah, it could have life.
Well, I just connected Becky to the line.
Hello?
Yeah.
Becky. I haven't talked to you in a while.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a few good months.
Yeah, she has better things to do than go on our radio show.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
No, I was preoccupied with some stuff, but yeah, I'm back. Just been busy with work.
Oh, Oh, that's cool. I'm just messing with you. Plus, it could be the fact we haven't had a radio show in a while.
Our next news story. Yeah, our next news story that's ironic is I found a news article about the Hobbit of Flores Island, which is what we were talking about on our last show last week. It says the debate over the origins of the so-called Homo floresiensis, I think that's how you pronounce that, or the Hobbit, has been reignited, and scientists have claimed that it was nothing but iodine-deficient species of human. The remains, allegedly as recent as 15,000 years, were discovered in 2003 in the Lying Bua caves in the Indonesian island of Flores by archaeologists seeking evidence of the first human migration from Asia to Australia. Remember, Nick was talking a little bit about the origins of where the Evu Bobo came from, or the Evu Gogo.
I still think that'd be pretty neat to go there, though.
Yeah, but
if we don't get raided.
Yeah, that too. Maybe we don't get raided. Me and
Tim watched a video online, Nick, of literally they had a video of some of the villagers robbing cars as they were driving down the highway.
Oh, gosh.
That's all in the science.
Our next news story is about a space hotel. A Russian company has unveiled an ambitious plan to launch a cosmic hotel for wealthy space tourists. Orbital Technologies says its comfortable four-room guest house could be in orbit by 2016. Guests would be ferried to the hotel on a Soyuz shuttle of the type used to transport cosmonauts to the International Space Station. The Moscow-based firm did not reveal how the hotel would be built or funded or how it would get up into space, but American businessman Dennis Tito, for instance, has been a business partner since he went up into the International Space Station recently. It says the new hotel would offer great comfort, according to the chief executive of Orbital Technologies. The hotel would be aimed at wealthy individuals and people working for private companies who would want to do research in space. It would follow the same orbit as the International Space Station and could even be used as an emergency in case something were to happen in space to the International Space Station.
Well, can we say disaster in the making coming on?
Yeah.
What do you think, Brent? Think that's asking for some sort of accident or death of some sort, like Tim was saying?
Yeah, I could definitely see something like that happen.
Are you going to
maybe,
Would you go up there?
No. Oh. I was going to say,
Yeah.
Would you ever go up there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would try to go up there. It'd be pretty cool.
Do a ghost hunt in space?
No. Here's one thing to remember when Brent said back in high school. Remember, he'd want to be like on the Ramsay, maybe just flying in the middle of space, doing a guitar solo. Remember, Brent?
Oh yeah. That was a while ago.
Years ago. Yeah, that was like 5 years ago.
Well, another article. This one I got specifically for Brent, and because we were talking about this before. Mazlan Othman, a Malaysian astrophysicist, is set to be tasked with coordinating humanity's response if and when extraterrestrials make contact with humans. Aliens who landed on Earth, if they landed on Earth and asked, "Take me to your leader," they would be directed to her. She will set out the details of her proposed new role at a Royal Society conference in Buckinghamshire next week. The 58-year-old is expected to tell delegates that the proposal has been prompted by the recent discovery of hundreds of planets orbiting other stars, which is thought to make the discovery of extraterrestrial life more probable than ever before. The United Nations says that she will be the head of a new branch expected for extraterrestrials visiting Earth.
Yeah,
it's Mazlan Othman, a Malaysian astrophysicist.
Huh.
But then, of course, there has to be one person that disagrees, and Stephen Hawking had to butt his nose in, and it says he warned the UN and other people of alien interlopers, and he said they should be treated with caution. He says, I imagine that they might exist in massive ships, having used up all of their resources from their home planet. The outcome for us would be just like if Christopher Columbus first landed in America, which didn't turn out very well for the Native Americans.
Well, I got one thing to say about that. Remember how you said he butt his nose into it? First of all, he wouldn't butt his nose into it. He'd be riding up in his wheelchair and going, hey, I got something to say.
Oh, wow.
But it does get better, though. I'm not going to get into this. It's for another radio show, but it said Stanton Friedman snapped back at him pretty good and tore him a new one, which is pretty good.
We got to talk to Stanton about that. We have to talk to Stanton about that, no doubt.
Hey, guys, I was going to say, what's his name? Hawking sounds like he's having a Bill-esque moment. You know, the reptoids are going to come from the bowels of the earth and take us over. So,
yeah, Nick.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Bill's actually in our chat room tonight right now.
Hey, Bill.
Well, let's get started with tonight's show. Tonight's show we're going to base off of the mystery called the Racetrack Playa, which is the sailing stones. Sorry, I'm stuttering. The sailing stones are these stones that are supposedly move on their own around in this valley, and nobody really knows what's going on with them. Anyways, I'm going to read a little synopsis, and then we'll get started. The level surface of this parched basin provides the backdrop for one of Death Valley's most intriguing geological puzzles, the mysterious sliding rocks of the Racetrack Playa. Scattered across the extraordinary flat surface of the playa, far from the edges of the surrounding mountains are boulders, some of them reaching 700 pounds, and smaller pieces of rock. Stretching behind many of the stones, you'll see grooved trails. Some are short, some long, some straight, and some curvy. Clearly, these rocks must gouge furrows as they flat across the playa, yet no living person has ever witnessed these amazing rocks move. What makes these rocks skid as much as 2,890 feet across a flat surface? The phenomenon was noticed over 100 years ago by explorers and gold miners, but it wasn't studied scientifically until about 1948. So what's your first impression?
Well, I've heard about them all my life in Death Valley. I know they're supposed to be near Bakersfield if I don't remember right. But I think they're real because people would have no reason to lie about that kind of stuff. And there's even photos of them.
Well, you know what the explanation for these things are already. I mean, I can't believe you guys would argue with this so smart geologist on the History Channel. It's the wind, of course. Duh.
Well, one of the reasons why they move, people say, is the sailing stones are most likely moved by strong winter winds, reaching 90 miles per hour. Once it has rained enough, it fills the area with just enough water to make the clay slippery. Prevailing southwest winds have raced across the racetrack and blow to the northeast. Most of the rock trails go in that direction, lending support to that one hypothesis. But there's something strange about that. Hurricane winds are 74 miles per hour, and if they claim 90 mile an hour per wind blow through there, wouldn't that mean that would be pretty dangerous?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Well, I know we've been through Bakersfield countless times.
700-pound boulders all over Florida and the South down there?
Well, not just that. Me, you, and Brenda alone have driven through Death Valley and Bakersfield, dozens of times, and, you know what I mean? I've never personally been there when there's 90-mile-an-hour winds. I've seen 20 and 30. What are you, Brenda? You ever seen any 90-mile-an-hour winds in Death Valley?
I don't think so.
Well, the only thing is, in hurricanes, they said winds at that speed would be strong enough to rip the roof off a house. And I don't really think there'd be anybody even standing out there if the winds were not that high.
You ever heard of this, Becky? You like the moving rocks?
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess what they're trying to say, the hurricane winds are causing these 700-pound rocks to move. That's the theory?
Well, they're not hurricane winds. They're just winds that are strong enough to be categorized as hurricane winds.
Okay.
That's what one person said. That's what one scientific group said. But to go along with that, a scientist named Reed, R-E-I-D, Reed and his students first boxed. They did they're tested out this theory. So they boxed the rocks that they wished to test, and then flooded the area, and then flooded the dry mud surface inside the box to simulate a rain-soaked area, like they were saying, like the rain moves the rocks. Next, they hooked up giant fans, and they made sure that the boulders were able to slide across the mud, like if there was winds. And it says, after crunching some numbers, Reed's team figured out that it would take a 175-mile-per-hour wind to move a 44-pound rock. It would take a 300-mile-an-hour wind to move the 700-pound rocks without the help of ice. Not just mud, ice. Their conclusion, which they recently published in the journal Geology, is that wind alone and mud just can't do the trick.
Wow. 300-mile-an-hour winds.
They said they had to have 300-mile-per-hour winds to blow over some of those rocks.
Oh.
Well, how much do the rocks move? I mean, how big of a distance are the rocks actually moving?
Some of them move up to like a mile or two.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. No wind is doing that. That's nonsense.
Well, what's weird is these 700-pound boulders are in the very center of the valley, and you can see the trails leading. You can see the trails leading all the way towards wherever the present spot, how you say the spot it's sitting in.
Well, exactly, and I mean, I'm looking at the picture myself, and I see some of them are even zigzagging and stuff. So.
Yeah, I've seen shows on that before, and photos. That's I don't know. It's weird. It is. Yeah, there's giant rocks that are half the size of an SUV are moving through the desert. I mean, like I said, there's no wind force. 300 miles an hour. Do they even get that fast in hurricanes? I mean, that's like a category.
Well, my thing is, if there's 300-mile-per-hour winds, wouldn't we be able to feel it?
Yeah. 300 miles. That happens. I don't even think Katrina's winds were that fast. I think they topped out at 170, 175, not 300 miles. So these numbers show that it's an unrealistic wind speed, that'll occur in nature. It takes a man-made device for something like that to occur.
Well, one question, though. If winds move these rocks, why does it only happen at one place on Earth?
Yeah, that's true.
Very true.
Like, why doesn't this happen somewhere else, over in Europe or somewhere, if it's supposedly the wind moves the rocks? I mean, there's places that get higher winds than that.
After all, Bakersfield's the jewel spot for it, right?
Bakersfield, of course.
Bakersfield, what a place that is, huh, Jaron Brent?
Yeah.
Gold Point has rock.
Well, I don't know about rocks in other places, but I know about, like, the moving coffins in Barbados and other places where, like, coffins will be moving. People will find that the coffins have been moved around and stuff like that, and the question is, how are those moving around on their own? So objects, being found moving around, it's obviously not unheard of, but, these are 700-pound rocks, so.
Well, nobody's ever seen the rocks move either, which is weird.
Yeah.
And there's tourists out there every day. No, they've never seen them move. Well, here's what else is weird. Brent, what would you do if in Gold Point you seen there's a rock that was sailing across the ground and Herb had a saddle and was riding it?
I'd start filming it.
Well, I looked up on Google. It says, what's the strongest wind speed ever recorded? And it says the strongest wind speed ever recorded in the United States was 318 miles per hour in it says, Oklahoma. In Oklahoma City on May 3rd, 1999.
What's that?
And what about What happened in Oklahoma? I missed that. What did you say?
Oh, the highest wind ever recorded was 318 miles per hour in Oklahoma City.
There you go, Becky. Your neck of the woods.
I know.
That's in Tornado Alley.
So, does that mean that the racetrack gets winds that are only 10 miles beneath the strongest wind ever recorded on a daily basis?
That's true.
Yeah, well, maybe there's a future trip in the out to the playa in the future, guys.
Well, it's only in about 2 hours from where we're at right now. So it's
within
a reasonable distance.
Friend drives through it every time he has to go home from Vegas, and we always go out there too whenever we visit California. Death Valley near Bakersfield.
So, what's your personal opinion, Brent?
On the rocks?
Yeah, like on the wind blowing them and that whole hypothesis.
I don't know. I saw that episode on Discovery Channel when they were talking about the whole blowing the rocks, which sounds awkward, but
well, like I said, I think it's bullshit that the wind does that, because like I said, I don't see no 320 mile an hour wind going through Bakersfield, California.
Well, think about it, because we live there. Just picture it. If there was winds that strong, there'd be no way that Brent's house would even be standing.
Yeah.
If it's because it's close to Brent's house. Well, here's a couple of other hypotheses.
Oh yeah, let's listen to these.
One scientist said the rocks are carried in with ice or glaciers over long periods of time.
Well, that sounds nice, but then again, there's no glaciers there for over 10,000 years.
Yeah, that's a inconvenient fact.
I mean, sure, I believe the rocks are probably settled there by glaciers. I believe that, but like I said, but they move by glacial movements. That's completely, excuse my language, BS and bullshit. So.
Yeah.
But no, I think this phenomenon's pretty cool because I see the pictures of it and it's real, but. I know that's it's puzzling me. I know I usually try to take every single method possible to try to explain something, but like I said, I don't know how to possibly move.
Would you ever be interested in visiting the site, Brent?
What's that?
Would you ever be interested in visiting the site?
Yeah, I would want to go there.
We'd ride them, Brent. You ride the rocks while they're moving. A whole inch in a year.
So what are the paranormal theories? Are there any? Are there like any legends surrounding this?
Yeah, there's some good ones. Those are the ridiculous and the crazy exploits. I'm getting there. Those are good. I have two more things to say, then I'll get to that question, Becky. It's pretty funny. Well, an alternative hypothesis that another scientist said, he says, as rainwater accumulates, strong winds blow thin sheets of water quickly over a relatively flat surface of the racetrack. A layer of ice forms on the surface as night temperatures fall below freezing. Wind then drives these floating ice sheets. It says they use their aggregate inertia, providing the necessary force required to move the larger stones. The rock trails would again remain parallel for the southwest wind. So basically saying it's a combination of wind and rain.
Well, that again, sounds nice again. Well, as I said, it sounds nice again, but then again, during the summertime it gets to 125 degrees. How it won't, even then, it drops down to no lower than 80 to 90 degrees in the summertime. So that wouldn't explain for the freezing, you know what I mean, for the ice necessary to make it slide.
Yeah.
Well, we got a message on our MySpace yesterday of a lady who said that in 2003 she went to the racetrack, and she told me to share her story. It's about 2 paragraphs long. I was going to read it for her. It says, after visiting, this is a clip from it, after visiting, I still had no idea about that. Many of the tracks we saw were heading back towards a cliff, and the rocks definitely thin out as you get farther from the cliff. So I don't think they make it all the way across to the cliff. It seems like after hundreds of years, you get a big pile of rocks in the middle or at the edge of the cliff. but it says we didn't see anything like that. I suppose it's possible that people come out and steal the rocks, but that wouldn't account for hundreds of years before people showed up. We also saw several rocks that didn't come from the Black Cliffs to the south. While most of the rocks were black, squared-off chunks, several were more like sandstone that showed weathering similar that you see in river stones. Are people adding their own rocks, is what the lady said. And she said, and another thing, the Discovery Channel show back in 2003 also said that they flew over with a helicopter on the edge of the cliff, and I guess she was saying that there wasn't any rocks piled up at the edge of the cliff either.
Well, that must be the show Brent said he's seen on the Discovery Channel.
What's that?
Oh, Jeremy's talking about the show. He said there was a show on the Discovery Channel in 2003 about it. That must be the one you've seen.
Yeah. I remember that one. Just like parts of it, though. When they were doing the stupid tests and everything.
And cake stands.
Yeah, that too.
It says that, where's the rocks going? That is a good point.
Well,
these stones have names. I'm reading it up. It looks like these stones, like there's certain names. Like one is named Karen.
The scientists do that.
They have names for the stones.
I want to name that one there Joe Bob.
There's Marianne.
What would you name the rock, Nick?
We name
name a rock.
We can name a rock after Herb, in honor of Herb.
I would.
Nick, what would you call your rock, Brent?
Mine?
Yeah.
Mine would probably be
Joe Chow.
Yeah.
Harold Ebenezer III. Well, I'm going to get to Becky's weird explanation. There's a Mormon settler who says back in 1899, he said he'd seen a rock levitating from the mountain and hovering across the racetrack and falling into position.
Oh, there you go.
Wow.
And then another guy says, another popular explanation says it's aliens.
You know, I somehow knew in the back of my mind that was going to come up. I didn't say anything, but I knew that was going to come up.
My only comment about that, I'm not saying that it can't possibly happen, but my comment is, why would they travel all the way across space just to move some rocks and where no one's going to see them or anything?
Yeah, that's true.
In the middle of Bakersfield, California. In the middle of Death Valley.
What do you think, Brent?
I think they would. Not really. Not really.
They're playing a game. They're playing a game. It's an intergalactic game of chess with rocks.
It's like the Men in Black at the end when they're playing marbles with Earth. They're doing the same thing with those rocks.
Yeah.
I guess there wouldn't be if there would be an actual shape, kind of like a desert crop circle, but I'm sure people would have already seen them from above and said, oh, there's a certain shape or design here, so I guess it probably wouldn't be something like that, but...
Well, exactly.
This is where we hold them! This is where we fight! This is where they die!
As I say, they're looking at the pictures and they leave trails, but I don't know if you can really see them.
Like Becky's saying too, I'm sure it's in such a popular location. Bakersfield is a major town where you drive through to get to Southern California, so I'm sure out of the millions of people that drive through there each year, I'm sure someone would have videotaped the phenomenon if it was alien, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Tim, the millions of people that walk through there that are not wanted. The millions that pour in.
Well, we have about 30 minutes left in the show, and when we come back, we're going to get started with our second topic of the night, and you're listening to Bigfoot's Pad Paranormal Radio.
Oh, we've gone bananas for Big Banana and Crayon. You'll learn to write a lot of ways. Oh, we've gone bananas for Big Banana and Crayon. The colors are so bright and gay.
Hello, I'm Mr. Ed.
A horse is a horse, of course, and no one can talk to a horse, of course. That is, of course, unless the horse is the famous Mr. Ed. Go right to the source and ask the horse. He'll give you the answer that you endorse. He's always on a steady course. Talk to Mr. Ed. People yakety-yak the street and waste your time a day. But Mr. Ed will never speak unless he has something to say. A horse is a horse, of course, and this one will talk till his voice is hoarse. You never heard of a talking horse? Well, listen to this.
I am Mr. Ed.
And welcome back to Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Radio. Tonight's show we're talking about the racetrack in the Saving Stones. And our second topic of the night, which we're going to get started on in just a minute, it is about the Victorio Peak and the strange phenomenon around that mountain. And before we get on to the next topic, I was just going to ask Brent, is a horse, Brent?
Of course.
Did he give you the right answer that you endorse?
Yes.
Anyway, so we're going to start on our second topic. It's called Victorio Peak. Before we get started on this topic, I'd like to make a disclaimer. You cannot travel to this mountain nowadays. It's owned by the government, and it's similar to Area 51. They will kill you if they catch you on this mountain. So I wouldn't recommend trying to make an expedition to go find this gold in the mountain or trying to get out there. Wow. All right, well, how this is going to work, I have kind of a lot of reading to do. I'm just going to read a little bit and stop and ask questions and things. All right, so long before Victorio Peak was taken over and surrounded by the government, a man named Milton Ernest, or Doc Noss is his nickname, he took time exploring Victorio Peak while he was deer hunting. Noss was born in Oklahoma but traveled all over the Southwest seeking adventure. In 1933, he married Ova Beckworth. They made their home in Hot Springs, New Mexico, which was later named Truth or Consequence after the game show in the 1950s. In November of 1937, Doc, Babe, which is his wife's nickname on here, and 4 others left on a deer hunt into the Amarillo Basin. Setting up camp on the desert floor at the base of Victoria Peak at that time, the men headed into the wilderness while their wives stayed at camp. Deer hunting by himself, Doc scouted the base of the mountain. When it began to rain, he sought shelter under a rocky overhang near the summit of the mountain. While waiting for the rain to subside, he noticed a stone that looked like it had been worked in some fashion. It wasn't natural, put it that way. Reaching down, he was able to budge it, but after digging around the rock, he got his hands underneath it. Lifting up the rock, he found a hole that led straight down into the mountain. Peering into the darkness, Doc saw an old man-made shaft with a thick wooden pole attached at one side. Doc thought that he had discovered an old abandoned mine shaft. When the rain finally stopped, Doc returned to camp telling Dave about the discovery. The two decided to keep the discovery between themselves and return to inspect the shaft later. So what do you think so far, Nick? What do you think it sounds like?
It sounds like, they found an abandoned mine shaft from the I'm not sure about the gold rush. Was there ever any gold rush in that area? I know there was in Northern California.
Well, there was gold all over the New Mexico hills and things. But my personal theory or thought when I first read that, I thought it sounded like a hideout or something. Or either a hidden mine. What do you think, Brent?
I kind of figured it was kind of like what you were thinking, like a hideout.
Yeah, somewhere where they hide something like a stockpile of gold or something.
Yeah.
But that's Becky. What does she think?
The hideout theory sounds good to me. I mean, I don't know. You always hear about these places where they're hiding treasure and stuff out in the West, so it's not really surprising.
Or you have to throw the alien conspiracy in there somehow. I mean, every single phenomenon has to have an alien theory somehow.
Aliens were putting the rocks. They just didn't want to admit it. So, anyways, within just a few days, Doc and Babe were back at the site with ropes and flashlights. Testing the old wooden pole attached to one side of the passage I mentioned earlier, Doc rejected the idea of using it and dropped into the shaft with a rope instead. While his wife looked on from above, Doc inched his way down the narrow passageway into the mountain almost 60 feet. Near the bottom, he encountered a huge boulder hanging from the ceiling, almost blocking his way. Finally reaching the bottom, he stepped into a chamber the size of a small room. On the walls were drawings, some painted and others chiseled, that appeared to have been made by Indians. At one end of the chamber, the shaft continued downward. Once again, Doc began to descend, this time about 125 feet before the shaft again leveled off to a large natural cavern. Several smaller rooms had been chiseled from the rock along one wall. Stepping into the eerie darkness, Doc was alarmed when he saw a human skeleton kneeling and securely tied into a stake driven into the ground. The skeleton's hands were bound behind its back. Apparently the person had been deliberately left there to die. Within moments, he had found more skeletons, most of them bound to the stakes like the first. Exploring further, he found yet even more skeletons stacked in a small enclosure, much like a burial chamber. All told, he reportedly found 27 human skeletons in the cavern.
Damn.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I mean, maybe it was a burial chamber of some sort.
What do you think? Do you think it was like a... Nick, do you think that it was like, maybe it was like a burial chamber, like a prison or something, or what do you think?
Well, with the guy, let's see, it sounds like it could have been maybe a prison, but I know the Mayans and other tribal people would sometimes, they do their sacrifices to their gods, and
I want your blood. I want your soul. I want them both right now.
And I think that maybe those people were just left there in the mountain to appease a god or something. But I'm not completely sure about that. It's just a theory.
I mean, that's true, but they always remove vital organs, and sometimes in the process they remove ribs and stuff too. So it depends on how fully the remains were discovered.
Do you know how old the skeletons are?
Oh, go ahead, Becky. I couldn't hear you.
Do you know how old the skeletons are? Like, were they able to test and see how old they were?
Well, this was in 1937. They didn't have that kind of stuff.
Okay, right.
So he said that they were clearly like Indian paintings on the walls, like ancient man and like Indian paintings. So that's probably what it was. But if you found that, Brent, what would you do?
I don't know. I would probably pretend I never saw it.
So, anyways, as Doc continued to explore the side caverns, he found a hoard of treasure, including coins, jewels, saddles, and priceless artifacts, including a gold statue of the Virgin Mary. He also found some old letters. The most recent, which was dated in 1880, was the most recent letter. The treasure was only the beginning. In a deeper cavern, Doc found what he thought was a stack of worthless iron bars. He estimated there were thousands of them, each weighing over 40 pounds stacked against the wall. He was barely able to lift one, much less think of carrying it back to the surface. Later, the wealth in the cave would be calculated to be worth more than $2 billion. Doc filled his pockets with gold coins, grabbed a couple of jeweled swords, and laboriously returned to his wife, waiting anxiously at the surface. After telling her what he'd seen and showing her the loot, she insisted he go back into the mine for some of those iron bars. After much searching, he found a small iron bar that he could carry back through the narrow passageway. When he reached the surface, he told Babe, "This was the last one of them babies I'm going to bring out." Babe rolled the bar over and noticed a yellow gleam where the gravel of the hillside had scratched off centuries of black grime. what looked like a piece of iron was actually a solid 40-pound gold bar, and there was thousands of them in the mountains. After the discovery of the treasure, Doc and Dave spent every free moment exploring the tunnels inside the peak, living in a tent at the base of it. On each trip, Doc would retrieve 2 gold bars and as many artifacts as he could carry. At one time, he brought out a crown, which contained 243 diamonds and 1 pigeon blood ruby. Yet, Doc trusted no one, not even his wife, disappearing into the desert, hiding pieces of the treasure in places that he never revealed to anybody that still remain there today. Among the artifacts Doc reported to have retrieved were documents dated 1797, which he buried in the desert in a Wells Fargo chest, along with various other treasures. Along with the originals, although the originals have never been recorded or recovered, a copy of one of the documents was taken from his wife after she died, and it was signed by Pope Pius III.
Wow, that's unbelievable. I mean, now definitely sounds like it's like Nick was saying. Now it's definitely not the sacrificial thing. Maybe it was other tomb robbers trying to go down there and get it, but maybe they couldn't get back out somehow, or maybe they were murdered trying to find the treasure.
Well, that's what. Whenever you first said there were skeletons discovered, I was thinking, are those other treasure hunters maybe? But
wow, that's unbelievable. The Doc there sounds like he's one rich mofo.
Oh, Brent, I know where they are.
Gold. Oh, I could make just a couple of facts. With all that gold and then those letters, especially with a letter from a pope, that's probably from the Spanish when they were in that area, and they looted a lot of gold from the Indians and down in South America and out in the West. So maybe that was one of the. Oh, excuse me.
You're using your hero quest skills
hideouts.
putting together the past to make a puzzle.
Yeah.
Right, Nick? You're using your hero quest skills?
Yes, I'm using a hero quest skill.
Brent, I know where the skeletons came from, Brent.
What's that?
I know where the skeletons came from.
Where?
They didn't like the chili.
No, you're
Brent, when you go into the underground chapel, you find those down there with the poles and everything.
And bowls of chili.
Yeah,
cool.
That would be insane. Becky doesn't know what we're talking about. She probably thinks we're insane talking about chili bowls.
Chili? Oh, gosh.
Believers think that Doc Knox found the Casa del Cueva del Oro, Spanish for the House of the Golden Cave. Soledad was the former name of Victorio Peak, and Doc apparently found the 7th door located at high noon, according to the note, but was promised health, wealth, and honor, but those would evade him eventually. 4 years after his discovery, Congress had passed the Gold Act, which outlawed the private ownership of gold, so Doc would be unable to profit from the treasure on the open market. He didn't care about the historical value of the treasure inside Victorio Peak, so he mostly ignored the pouches, packs, and artifacts while he concentrated on the gold coins and bars. Although he was unable to sell the gold bars on the open market, he continued to work steadily to remove the treasure. In the spring of 1938, Doc Knox and Babe went to the Santa Fe to establish legal ownership of the find, filing a lease with the state of New Mexico for the entire section of land surrounding the peak. Subsequently, he also filed several mining claims on and around Victorio Peak, as well as treasure trove claims. With legal ownership established, he began to openly work the claim, but he also became increasingly paranoid, hiding the gold bars all over the desert and going insane. So it's like cursed, basically. Are you doing something, Nick?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Oh, I think I got loud. When Dog's story eventually hit the headlines, scholars began speculating on how enormous treasure could have been stashed in the peak. Some believe that Doc Knox found the golden cave I was telling you about. Others believe that he found the treasure of Don Juan de Onit, who in 1598 founded New Mexico as a Spanish colony. Seeking out the 7 cities of gold, he was said to have been a cruel man, brutally subjecting the Indians to do his bidding by beating and torturing them. Reportedly, he amassed a fortune of gold and silver treasure and jewels before being ordered back to Mexico City in 1607. Others speculate that the treasure could be the missing wealth of Emperor Maximilian, who served as Mexico's emperor in the 1860s. When Maximilian heard the plot to assassinate him, he began to move his gold and treasure out of Mexico. Legend says he went to a palace full of valuables to the United. He sent his stuff to a palace full of valuables in the United States to be hidden, and he was assassinated in 1867. And then Chief Victorio enters the story. The most colorful legend associated with the Peak treasure concerns with the great Warm Springs Apache war chief, who used the entire Hambrillo Basin as his stronghold. He absolutely refused to live on the reservation in Arizona where his people died from hunger and insect bites. Victorio's land had always been in the mountains of New Mexico, and a treaty between the federal government and Washington and had promised they could stay on those lands as long as the mountains stand and the rivers flow. With the discovery of gold in the mountains, such did not happen. In 1878, the treaty was broken and Victoria went on warpath.
Well, you know what? Now that you read these other theories, I think that's more along the lines of what really happened. I think it is a treasure trove, most likely from the Spanish, like Nick was saying.
Yeah.
Well, it says that it's either from the Spanish, or it said that it could have been one of the Mexico emperors, or it said what's going on is there's an Indian named Victorio, and I guess he went raiding the area around the peak, and it said that he put his gold in the mountain supposedly.
Well, you know what? That could also explain me everything too, because when you think about it, you said there were things dating as soon as like 1880, right?
Mhm.
Well, there you go. That would explain if he raided. There would be all kinds of different areas worth of stuff there. You know what I mean? If he's doing nothing but raiding, so.
Well, another theory is that the treasure belonged to a Catholic missionary named Felipe LaRue, or LaRuse. As the church documents are said to give his name, he was a native of France and was among the small group of priests who volunteered for service in Mexico. His party sailed to Florida, crossed the Gulf of Mexico to Veracruz, and from there, they went to Mexico City by ox cart. After a short rest, Padre LaRue left to the north, where he took up his work among the Indians and peons at a large hacienda near what's now the city of Chihuahua, Mexico, or New Mexico, reaching there in 1798. From the people at his new station, he heard stories of fabulous rich minerals in the mountains to the north. If he was interested in these stories, he did not reveal it. Instead, he continued with his teachings and ministering to the sick and spiritual needs to the small parish. Among his parishioners was an old man who had been an explorer and soldier of fortune during his youth. The man had traveled widely over the country to the north, and he knew LaRue personally and cared for him, and they became good friends. One day, LaRue asked about the riches which lay to the north. The old man said that if the good priest wanted gold, there was a rich deposit of gold hidden inside the mountain. It would take about 2 days' travel. It said it was near present-day El Paso, Texas. According to legend, the man said after 1 day's travel from El Paso, you'll come to 3 small peaks further to the north. To make a long story short, basically he told him how to get to the treasure. And there's another theory. It says all three stories are true because they said they had Indian cave paintings, which means the Indians were there. They found, they found gold Spanish coins, which means it was Spanish. And then it says they also found jewels and things like that they said belonged to the Aztecs. So they think that maybe all 3 were real.
Exactly, and you said that the 1880 thing was in a Wells Fargo chest, right?
Yeah. Well, to make a long story short, there's a lot of reading left, and we only have 10 minutes left in the show, so I'll tell you, the short story. To make a long story short, Doc Noss eventually ran out of money to get the gold out of the mountain. So he hired a partner to help him get the gold out of the mountain, and he double-crossed his partner, and the partner ended up shooting him and killing him. He murdered him.
Awesome.
And then, soon after that, his partner ran out of money and sold the claim to another mining company. And in 1963, the Gladys Mining Company of Denver, Colorado they said they obtained permission to work the site. And it says for 3 months, beginning in 1963, the group used a variety of techniques to search the area, but they failed to turn up anything. And it says the military eventually, in 1977, it says that, 1961 the military bought it. In 1963, the military allowed that one place to go. But it says the military, apparently, they said that they did find gold in the mountain, but they never said how much or where it was at or anything.
Huh.
But it's in
Good old Uncle
1979,
Sam. Double cross.
Hey, guys. I think Brent has a nice government conspiracy for this. Brent, what's going on?
I don't know. I haven't really thought of it.
Oh, yeah, I know you're the conspiracy master. No, I was going to say, with the the military found some gold and they didn't say how much. Now the government owns the mountain and won't let anybody on it. I wonder why.
Well, it says that from aerial maps, there's roads and things going out of there, and it says the government in 1961 started mining the site, and it says that they took out most of the gold. And I guess it says that to make a long story short, Doc Knotts went bankrupt trying to get all the gold out of the mountain. He did make a little bit of money, but not much, because his wife ended up leaving him, and then he ended up getting shot. So I guess in the end, he got really greedy and ended up getting to his head.
Exactly. So his greed takes over, and that's the end of everything.
But in 1979, the wife, Babe, she died without ever finding the treasure. However, Terry DeLones, her grandson, continued the family tradition and formed the Ova-Knott family partnership. By this time, Babe's story had spread across the nation, profiled in several magazines and newspapers. Hearing about the story, a man by the name of Captain Swanner, who was stationed at White Sands Missile Range in the early 1960s, came forward. Speaking to a Knott family member, he stated that he had been the chief of security in 1961 and was sent to inspect the report made by Airman Burlett and Captain Pearge. After determining the accuracy of the two men's reports, the entire area was placed off limits until an official investigation could be conducted. The gold was supposedly removed from the cave and sent to Fort Knox, is what he says. And it says in 1989, it says when a special act of Congress, they allowed 3 of the family members to go check on the mountain for gold. And it says that they ended up finding 18 gold coins on the mountain. So who knows? Who knows what's really there?
Yeah, except the government.
Well, like I said, it was brought to Fort Knox. Most likely that would be a likely place for it because that's where all the gold reserves go. And it's the most protected place in the United States, kind of the White House and the Congress building. So, I mean, I think they probably brought it there.
Yeah, that's why I heard that. Yeah.
We don't really know how much was actually there. It's kind of interesting.
But you said that Doc actually buried some of the treasure, didn't you?
Well, they said he buried like at least a half of it or a third of it into the desert all around there.
But then again, that's
you gotta wonder if that place is cursed, man.
It might be.
Well,
if it was a burial chamber and you go in and you steal all the treasure. Well, that might.
Well, there is more stories about it. It's just that we don't have enough time on our show to go over all the stories. But a good number of the stories have to do with curses and everything.
Yeah, I see in the 1990s, I'm on Wikipedia, it says one famous story made headlines in the early 1990s after 2 bodies were found trapped inside the peak. Later reports claim that the 2 bodies recovered were brothers Benjamin and Daniel Davenport. The 2 brothers were believed to have been trapped after a passageway became sealed off. The military never released the remains and sealed all remaining passages into Victorio Peak in 1995. That's interesting.
So basically, my personal opinion, it's cursed because the Indian, he ended up getting killed up on that mountain, and then you figure those people died in that burial chamber. And then the Doc Knotts himself was murdered. It says the wife lived a broken life, like with no money and no nothing, basically, ever since they found the gold and all that. And they said they don't really know how much gold is still in the mountain or how much that the government ended up pulling out, but the family apparently found something in 1989.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
the government probably cleaned out most of it.
What do you think, Nick?
Like I said, I think the government probably cleaned out most of the gold because, you know, they're going to get theirs, you know what I mean? The government's not going to, I mean, they bought the mountains for crying out loud, and you said it's like Area 51, so, I mean, if it's a secured area, there's got to be there's something down there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? That makes me mad.
So they either cleaned it out or they're still cleaning it out. Maybe there was gold beyond what we could think about in there.
So, Brent, so what we're going to do is next summer we're going to rent a car. We're going to tear ass to the mountain, and then we're going to go look for the gold, right?
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, well, what's really
if we can avoid the tanks and the
way we're going to
air patrols from seeing us, we'll make it to the mountain.
I was going to say, what's really going to happen is we're going to get, well, I'm telling you, we're going to get ripped apart by an Apache helicopter's machine gun, and then we're going to survive. One of us may survive and we get arrested by MPs, and then get beaten to death.
Brent. Where's the gold?
What's that?
Where's the gold? You're being interrogated.
That's all right, Becky. Another inside joke I'll have to tell you sometime.
Well, we just got a comment that I think I have to read. This is good. It's on our MySpace. It's by a guy. His name's Angelo Knox. And it says, yep. It says, I love your radio show. Is there more to come soon? With a question mark. He said, thank you. Keep it pimpin', Playboy. Spread the love. I had to read that out loud. That was probably some of the funniest things I've ever heard.
Back at you, Playa.
Are you keeping it pimpin', Brent?
Yes, we are pimping.
He called us Playboy.
Back at you, Playa.
Paranormal pimps.
We have about 2 minutes left in the show, and I was going to let Nick talk a little quick recap of the show for about a minute.
Okay. Well, earlier in the first half hour, we talked about the Racetrack Playa and all the different theories that try to explain it. There's wind and ice that are involved. There's some rain, and that the rocks can levitate, and maybe there's some UFO alien phenomenon going on. And then in the second half, we just finished up a part about Victorio Peak, where this huge treasure is found in the middle of this mountain by this guy back in the 30s, and has been discussing the various theories as to what, where that treasure came from, and maybe it's cursed. A bunch of people died or had very bad lives that were involved with that mountain. There's 27 skeletons they found in the mountain itself. So, and that was another interesting half of the show. And hopefully, maybe next time in a future show, we can do more weird places like this. Kind of fun. But do we know what we're going to do for next show, guys?
Yeah, we have about 40 seconds. I got to say it real quick. Our next show next Sunday at 7:30 is going to be about some ghost lights, which are strange floating orbs and things like that people see across the country and different areas. And we're going to talk about some of the theories and locations and things like that.
Be a good show, guys.
Yeah, we have about 20 seconds left. I'll let everybody say a quick goodbye. And
all right, thanks for watching.
Listening.
All right, everybody, take care.
And
goodbye,
tune in
everybody.
next week at 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Thank you, everybody.